Hi all, I'm Alicia, and today I'm going to be doing the English major book tag. And I was not officially tagged, but I saw this video on Caught Between Pages and I really wanted to do it. It looked fun. So I also don't want to assume any other booktubers that I watch are English majors unless they explicitly state so, and I cannot think of any off the top of my head. So if you are an English major and you are watching this, consider yourself officially tagged. Let's just get into it. Question number one is, what is a book you wear rose-colored glasses for, or a book that you would reread? And for this one, I went with The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. This series was so good, and I loved it, and I can reread it again and again and again and not get bored, so this is definitely my top pick for this question. Question number two is, and I'm reading off my notes here, John Mulaney is an English major. What's a book you felt accurately represented an aspect of your life? Am I supposed to know who John Mulaney is? Because I don't. Does that make me a bad English major? For this question, I picked two books, and the first one is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I really enjoyed this book, and I feel like I read it at a very pivotal time in my life. I think I was in, I want to say first year, potentially second year? No, it was definitely first year of university, which was like a million years ago. But yeah, this book is about twins, Kath and Ren, who are off to university for the first time. They're separated for the first time because obviously they're twins, they've been together their whole life. And yeah, one of the sisters, Kath, is really struggling with, confidence and fitting in without her sister and just making new friends. And so much was so relatable in this book. Like, Kath is scared to go to the cafeteria, so she literally eats protein bars that she keeps in her room. And she is very socially awkward and literally is a hermit, never leaves her room, never meets new people, doesn't go out drinking or partying or whatever it is first years do, and she just sits in her room and writes fan fiction. And I related so hard to this. For those of you who don't know, I am an identical twin, and I went through this exact thing in first year of university where it was my first time being separated from my twin, and it was weird, and I'd never had a room alone before because that's another whole story. I was in a two-bedroom dorm, two-bed dorm, but the other person moved out a couple months after starting university, so I had the room to myself for the very first time, and it was weird. But yeah, that's just such an offhanded tangent. But I related so hard to her struggles, kind of finding her own identity without that second person there with her, and also with the fan fiction writing. I started writing my own book when I was 18, and I moved off to university for the first time, and I just related so hardcore to Kath at that. Everything was so relatable, and I loved it. The second book I chose for this question is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I really love this book. For those of you, again, who don't know, I have OCD as well, so this book it was so relatable. It was the most relatable book I've ever read with OCD rep, and it just made me feel so seen and so validated, and it was just so emotional and perfectly done in my opinion. And I actually want to do a separate book talk for this book because I feel like a lot of criticisms about the book, which are valid. Everyone's opinion of this book is valid, no matter if you liked it or didn't. But I do feel like there were some intentional choices on the author's part that a lot of people didn't like and said it was, it slowed down the plot or there was no plot. And I would love to make a separate video addressing all my thoughts on this because I just absolutely loved all of the choices John Green made. And yeah, I love this. I feel like it represented OCD very well, and I just felt very seen. The third question, again, reading off my notes because I can't memorize these questions. It's, oh, so you want to teach? Which is a question that every English major gets all the time because everyone assumes it's the only thing you can do with an English degree. But even though English majors are very versatile, this question almost always gets asked. Name a book that went more in depth than you expected, or a book that surprised you with how many topics it covered. So, the book I chose for this question is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. Now, I chose this book because going into it, I thought it was going to be an epic fantasy novel, and it really wasn't. I was expecting I had heard it was so much like Harry Potter, and so I was kind of expecting that, but then, I don't know, it just explored some deeper topics that I wasn't expecting it to cover, and I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, and it really does cover some really dark topics, such as suicide, or at least suicidal ideation, and self-hatred, and familial, tensions and drama like that. And it really delved into some topics that I wasn't expecting to, and I really, really, really loved it. So yeah. And also, I like this is more on the second book in the series, which I didn't like as much as this one, but I still enjoyed it and I'm excited for the third one. But it just really like dives into like the chosen one trope, like what it feels like what's the mental, tax of being the chosen one. What if you're not a good chosen one? Like all of that psychological stuff that goes with it. She really delves into that, which I really liked in like this fantasy world. Even though it's like fantasy, it feels very contained and like grounded in the real world. And it is urban fantasy too, but like still, it does take place in like a magical boarding school. And it felt very real and grounded. And these people just had real problems that people in our world would deal with, and I just really, really liked that. Question 4 is symbolism. What's a book that represents something you love? And for this question, I chose Truthwitch by Susan Dennard, and I read this book like probably 5 years ago. I don't quite remember, but what I do remember is I absolutely love the female friendship in this book, and I feel like female friendship is not something that's often at the forefront of a book. It's, always a romantic relationship, but this is like a platonic best friendship, and that is literally like the main characters. The relationship is the center of the plot, and like they're the kind of the heroes of the novel. Like their best friendship is what saves the world, and I love that aspect. I feel like a lot of books don't go that route, and yeah, it's just really good. I recommend it. So question number 5 is Pretentious paradox. Name a book you've read and often bring up in conversation to impress people. And I could not think of anything for this question because I don't think I do this. Like, I don't understand why reading certain books is more impressive than others. Like, I get that there's kind of a stigma related to like romance or like YA or whatever it is, but I personally just feel like if you're reading something you enjoy, like, I love that. Like, good for you. I'm not gonna judge anyone's reading tastes, so I don't feel like I'm one of those people that are like, oh my god, I only read classics, I'm so sophisticated and educated. Like, no, not at all. So yeah, I didn't come up with an answer for this question. Question number 6 is the art of BS. BS is the concept of arguing for the possibility of something to be true. What is a book that you feel like you could debate about for eternity? And I have 2 books for this question. They're very different, and I would debate about them in very different ways. The first book I chose is Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. The reason I chose this is because there have been so many academic papers written about this book for so many different purposes, just researching about so many different things, and I feel like this is also such a big, like, huge cultural phenomenon that it would be so fascinating not only to analyze the representation in the book, and I'm not here to argue, I'm not talking about debating whether the book is good or bad, because that's not really what I mean. It's more so like, why did people love it so much? What was the financial impact, and what impact did it have on the publishing industry, on pop culture, on movies, book to movie adaptations or something like that. Like, there's so many avenues that you could explore with this, and I feel like I could talk about Twilight and read academic articles about Twilight literally forever because they're all so fun to read. People just analyze this and like in such different ways, and it's fascinating. And that was probably a boring little tangent, but yeah. So my first book is Twilight. And my second book for this question is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I chose this book because I think it is so well written, and I feel like everything is so intentional on the author's part. Like everything that Vanessa is thinking, feeling, how she talks to people, what types of conversations, and how people confront her about the issues she's having, her relationship with Strain, like how she reacts like years later when she's in her 30s. And I just feel like there's so much to pull out of this book, and I don't think I would ever get sick of like doing that like deep dive, like critical analysis and discussing and debating about every single thing in this book. So yeah, if you haven't read this, it is quite uncomfortable and a bit dark and disturbing, but it is so worth it. I read it twice in a row when I read it this past year, and yeah, it's just so good. I highly recommend. The next question on my list is your favorite old dead white author. Nothing is perfect as proven by classic literature. What's a book that you know hasn't aged well that you either love or hate? My answer to this question is Lolita. So obviously I don't think Vladimir Nabokov, when he wrote it, was like, oh, everyone's going to love this relationship, it's so romantic, it's so good. Like, I don't feel like that's not the way it's aged badly, in my opinion. I just mean we've become a lot more critical of toxic relationships in media, including books, especially in the last like 20 years or so. So yeah, there's definitely been a lot of critical analysis of Lolita, and it's a classic, and yeah, I personally read it, and it is a very uncomfortable, icky feeling reading it because, for those of you who don't know, Lolita is about a 13-year-old girl named Lolita, but her name's not actually Lolita. He calls her Lolita, but her name's Dolores, and she's in a relationship. I would not call it a romantic relationship, but a sexual relationship with her, 40 plus year old stepfather turned lover. It's a very disturbing. It's a very gross story. It's just not a good story, but it is quite interesting, and the writing is quite good. And yeah, I feel like I've been rambling about this book forever, but yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it to people who aren't already interested in that base story. Like, I personally read it because I read My Dark Vanessa, and I was really interested to know why/how Vanessa could interpret Lolita as a love story, because I had heard what it was about before. And so I was like, you know what, I need to pick up Lolita for myself and, kind of see what this is about. And yeah, I don't know how Vanessa ever interpreted it as a love story, because it is not. It's about a very abusive, just such messed up relationship. But yeah, that was my choice for this question. The next question is Dark Academia. Who is a book character you love but know in your heart you would not get along with? My first choice is Selena Sardathian from Throne of Glass, and I chose this just because, as much as I absolutely love Selena and I love the series, and I would want to be friends with her, like, desperately, I know that Selena is very, like, snarky and sassy and arrogant and dramatic and kind of like, high maintenance, and I just know that our personalities probably wouldn't mesh well. So yeah, I unfortunately have to say Selena. The second character I chose is Alex Stern from Ninth House. I, again, really love Alex. I really love the book, but I feel like if we were both placed in, like, this world and I just met her one day at school or on the street or whatever, I just feel like, again, we wouldn't mesh well. Like, I don't know. I feel like she's extremely closed off and damaged and a little rough around the edges, and I just feel like I would not want to be around that. Personally, like, I'm such, like, an introverted, stay in my room, stay away from people type person that I feel like we would both just be, like, not talking to each other and, like, staring straight ahead, and, like, we just would want nothing to do with each other. So yeah, I chose Alex, even though I love her deeply. So that is it for the English major tag. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and I will see you next time with another video. Thanks, guys. Bye.